Chapter 8. Okay, here, Monroe said. He stuck his lunch bag into Harlan's outstretched hand. I let out a sigh of relief. I was sure Monroe was about to do something crazy, and fighting Harlan is crazy. Harlan tossed the bag in the air and then caught it in both hands. Then he took his thumbs and smeared both lenses on my glasses. Then he spun away and ran off laughing. What a pig. I turned back to Monroe. His face was bright red and he was panting like an animal. Both of his hands were balled into tight fists. I put a hand on his shoulder. It was trembling. His whole body was trembling. Calm down, I said. Take a breath. There's nothing we can do about Harlan. Monroe's color slowly returned to normal, but he was still panting. He's a monster, I said. He's giving me bad dreams, really. Monroe squinted at me. You have nightmares about Harlan? About a monster, I said. I think the monster is Harlan. Lissa says if I ever stood up to Harlan, the dreams would stop, but I'm too afraid. A car horn honked as a black Volvo rolled by. Some kids waved at us from the back seat. We started walking again. It was a cloudy gray morning. The air felt damp and hot. I think I'll run ahead, Monroe said. Sometimes it helps me calm down if I run. Before I could reply, he took off. He leaned way forward and ran as if he were charging at something. He rocketed across the street without looking for traffic and kept going. I trotted behind him. I didn't feel like running that hard. Halfway down the block, our school came into view. Suddenly, the clouds parted and a beam of sunlight washed down. So surprising and bright, I had to shut my eyes. Sunspots flashed before my eyelids. They faded quickly. Clouds covered the sun again. I opened my eyes and gasped. What was that creature running toward the school? It was covered in brown fur, and even from this distance, I could see long, pointed teeth curling from its open mouth. A monster. A real one. My breath caught in my throat. I froze and stared as it lumbered across the schoolyard toward the entrance to the school. Is that Monroe? Can it be Monroe? The sun poured down again. I blinked. The monster had vanished. No one there. No monster. No Monroe. I saw two boys riding their bikes around the side of the building. Other kids made their way up the front walk. A girl dropped her backpack and papers flew across the grass. I'm going totally crazy, I said out loud. I decided it had to be the bright sunlight in my eyes. It made me imagine I saw a monster. Monroe isn't a monster. What's wrong with me? Chapter 9. My dad loves animals. He grew up on a farm where they had chickens and goats and sheep. He's always telling us stories about how he got in trouble trying to hide the animals in his bedroom at night when he was little. I guess that's why he manages a pet shop. It's a cool little store at the mall called Pets and More Pets. It's mostly birds and fish, but he has hamsters and gerbils and guinea pigs too, and sometimes some kittens. On Saturday, Dad gave me a ride to the mall. Monroe and I planned to meet there and hang out, and I wanted to check out the store. I needed to choose an animal to bring to the school pet fair. There would be $300 prizes for the strangest pets and the most talented. I thought maybe I'd bring one of Dad's mynah birds, or maybe some weirdo kind of fish. How lucky was I to have a whole pet shop to choose from? I always have to laugh when I ride with Dad. He drives a little Ford Focus, and he's so tall he has to fold himself up to sit behind the wheel. His knees come up to the steering wheel, and his head bumps the car roof. Mom says he needs a bigger car, but Dad says he's totally comfortable. We drove past the school and made a left turn on Main Street. How's school going? Dad asked. Okay, I said. He waited for me to say more, but I didn't. Too bad about the swim team thing, Dad said, eyes straight ahead on the road. Yeah, I said. Too bad. But Coach Waller says I can try out again later. That's not happening. I could feel myself blushing just thinking about standing there with my swimsuit down. So you have a new friend, this guy, Monroe, Dad said, signaling his turn into the mall. Yeah, I said. He's a good guy. We're a lot alike, I guess. Again, I pictured the dark furred monster loping toward the school in the bright sunlight. I couldn't get the picture out of my mind. It had to be my imagination running wild again. I wish I would stop seeing monsters everywhere. Dad parked in his reserved spot, and we walked into the mall. It was already crowded with Saturday morning shoppers. Dad took out his keys and unlocked the pet shop door. A tall, red macaw watched us from the front window. It started to squawk as if saying hello. I told Dad I'd meet him later and hurried off to find Monroe. We'd made a plan to meet in front of the bakery called the Donut Hole, but I didn't see him there. Something bumped me hard from behind. A jolt of fear ran down my body. But it was just a woman trying to carry packages and push a baby stroller. She apologized 3 or 4 times and moved on. I gazed across the aisle and saw Lissa. She was walking with her mom, coming out of a dress store. "Hey," I called to her, and she came jogging over. "Lissa, what's up?" She made a face. "My cousin is getting married, and Mom dragged me here to find a dress to wear. Everything she picks out is like for 5-year-olds," I said. "Why can't I just get a new pair of jeans?" Lissa opened her mouth in a growl. I hate shopping with her." Mrs. Gardner waved for Lissa to come back into the store. "I'm coming," Lissa shouted. She turned to me. "What are you doing here?" "Meeting Monroe," I said. I glanced over to the donut hole. He still wasn't there. I leaned closer to Lissa. "Can I tell you something? Something I saw?" She squinted at me. "Let me guess. You saw another monster?" I nodded. "Yes, I did." She stared at me. "You're serious?" "Lissa, I saw this big furry creature. Really, running across the schoolyard. I don't think I imagined it. I saw it so clearly. It had piles of dark fur and long yellow fangs." Lissa squinted at me. "You're serious?" she repeated. Of course I'm serious. I didn't mean to sound so breathless, but I wanted her to believe me. Monroe was running ahead of me. Then the sun came out and got in my eyes, and I saw a monster, furry, with teeth, and... "Calm down, Bean." Lissa grabbed my shoulder. "Okay, you saw a monster. Deal with it." "Huh? Deal with it?" "Yeah, deal with it." I didn't really know what she meant. We stared at each other for a long moment. "Want to hang out with Monroe and me?" I said finally. "How can I?" She glanced across the aisle at her mother, impatiently tapping her foot in front of the clothing store. "Got to go. If you see any monsters, don't scream for me, okay?" "Ha ha," I said. "Is your middle name Lame? You are so not funny." I saw Monroe walking toward the donut shop. I waved and ran over to him. He had a big bag of tortilla chips in one hand and was stuffing his face with them. "One of my hungry days," he said. "My mom says it's probably a growth spurt." "A growth spurt?" He nodded, chewing loudly. "Yeah, you know, when you suddenly shoot up an inch or two." I sighed. That never happened to me. I pictured the furry monster running in sunlight. Was that one of Monroe's growth spurts? Stop being stupid, Bean. We walked around for an hour or so. We bought soft pretzels with mustard, and then we bought cinnamon buns. We had a good time kidding around, joking about Harlan and other kids at school. Suddenly, Monroe stopped and rubbed his stomach. "You hear that? My stomach is growling like an angry bear." "And that means..." "It means I'm starving. Come on, dude, over here." He pulled me into the Burger Balloon. It's a huge hamburger place with the red and blue balloons floating at the ceiling and balloons bobbing on the walls and over the booths. We moved down the long aisle, searching for a table. I waved to Lissa and her mom. They had a booth near the window. We sat down on the other side of the restaurant. A tall waitress in a red and blue uniform took our order. Monroe ordered 2 cheeseburgers and 2 orders of fries. He really was hungry. Across from us, a mother raised a big cup, giving her baby a milkshake through a straw. 2 teenagers held hands across their table, waiting for their food to arrive. "Why is it taking so long?" Monroe said, glancing around. He rubbed his stomach. "Hear that?" I actually did hear it. His stomach growled so loud it sounded like a lion's roar. "Whoa," I stared at him. "Weird." His face turned red. His stomach growled again. He tapped his hands on the table. "I am way hungry." The waitress brought the food for the 2 teenagers. As she set down the tray, the aroma of the burgers floated over to us. Monroe jumped to his feet. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Bathroom," he said. "Be right back." I watched him stomp to the back of the restaurant. 2 kids from my school sat down in a booth against the wall. I called to them, but they couldn't hear me over the voices and clatter and loud music. I suddenly felt pretty hungry myself. I glanced around for our waitress. I sat up straight when I heard a shrill scream, a scream from the kitchen. "Help! A monster! Somebody! Help!" I spun around and stared at the back. The double kitchen doors had small, round windows, but I couldn't see into the kitchen. Did I hear right? Did the screaming woman say there was a monster? Help! Monster! Help! The frightened screams again. See? I wanted to shout to Lissa across the restaurant, but she and her mom had already left. The restaurant grew silent except for the blaring music. Some people jumped up, a few hurried toward the kitchen, a baby started to cry. I leaped to my feet just as Monroe came walking back. He had his hands in his jean pockets and walked slowly and calmly. Bean, what's up? He asked. I thought I heard screams. Did you hear them? I didn't answer. I was staring hard, staring at the chunk of raw hamburger on Monroe's chin.